so unified. In the lockdown, in the lockdown.
Gift.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. And indeed, every day is a gift. That's why it's called The Present. So that opening track was actually from Isaac Cappy. It's linked in the description box below, at least one version of it. It's kind of hard to find now. I feel like a lot of his stuff got scrubbed off of many video platforms in the last couple of years. So, but I always really like that track. So, happy Monday, everyone. How's everyone doing? Welcome to Catalyst Energies. Welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. We're going to go on a little journey today in this transmission. It's been quite a weekend. I have a couple things to share from different sources of information. The Schumann got very loud yesterday, so we're going to look at that just a little bit and, you know, just kind of direct you in areas to explore that further if that's something that interests you. So I have a reading to share with you today for the transmission. We'll go over the astrology, kind of acquaint ourselves with the astrology of the weekend, right? Venus and Mars came into an exact conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius, Saturday into Sunday, right? Late Saturday night into Sunday morning. Mercury in Aquarius has squared the nodes of the moon, and, a sense of what we know or we think we know or how we are interacting with the world right in front of us through our nervous system, really pitting us into a challenge with our soul's growth and evolution. And there's nothing but growth that happens in those squares. So, let's see here. The only announcement I really have to make, other than if you haven't signed up for the Embodying Your Star Wisdom Free Astrology Summit, that's happening now. There's already been 2 days. Today there'll be another release of speakers that have been recorded for this event. So I'll be posting stuff on my social media, Telegram, for when my talk is going to be published, which I believe is the 8th. So there'll be information on that. And if you want to subscribe to Telegram, it's description box below. But my only real announcement for today, as we really dive into this material, is that these transmissions, I think, after this week are going to go down to just twice a week. And really, I'm going to be reformatting some things around it. So this week I will be going daily as I normally have been for the last 2 years. And also, still take Wednesday off probably like I normally will, but I think that the daily medicine is going to morph into the Starseed ministry, and we'll do the transmissions on Monday for the week. We'll do astrology for the week on Friday, and leave more room to focus on and be productive with and commune with more of the subscriber base that is slowly but surely growing. So, and also to be able more time to do readings, to do larger reports, things like that. So I just wanted to let people know. So this is the last week that I'll be streaming like on a daily basis. And we're going to kind of, get ourselves to a place where we can just establish where our energy is going. And that, has a lot to do with Pisces and moving into Aries, of course, right? The vernal equinox is very close. And just like that, all the snow and ice has melted away. So the first thing I want to do is tell a story that is related really to Venus, because when we look at the reading today, we're going to see that there is a very strong Venus component. Venus and Mars, like I said, that conjunction in Aquarius. We've definitely arrived in some way, and as much as I entertain all aspects of possibility in terms of what could be happening, what is happening, what's happening behind the scenes, what type of disinfo is offered to us, what I see from all of the different areas that I at least collect from, and then my own feeling of what's going on, is that we've crossed the threshold. Like, we have collectively at a soul level, I believe, decided what type of society that we want to be part of. And that, this has been put into, I think it had been put into gear or put into effect a while ago, right? The precession of the equinoxes, the late 80s, when that cycle really came to an end and the new one was coming into form. And we already decided, I think, at a collective soul level and at a planetary level, that Earth was going to make the jump. And so now we're going through the process. And I think one of the things that we really did experience with this new moon and Venus and Mars coming together is like, yes, we're ready. We're ready to step into a very concrete but also spiritually idealized human civilization, something that will last beyond just our own input into it, something that is going to hold the highest potential of what we could be. And I really get the sense that despite everything that is happening and all of the attempts to draw our attention away, and not to say that there aren't activities and particular actions being taken in different ways that aren't important or they aren't part of the process. But I feel like we collectively kind of disengaged. And part of that's going to be, as we're going to see in the transmission, a very real experience of defeat for some people, a sense of material dissipation or abuse of the material aspect or abuse of others' resources really coming forward and having to be addressed very formally and very directly. And it's pretty amazing to see it in the reading. But what is coming out of it is just, it's so good. So I'm going to check in with the stream here real quick and make sure everything's healthy and good. It seems like it's good. Oh, there's the chat. It just popped in. It feels like a collective baptism occurred over the weekend. Yeah, Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I felt that Schumann yesterday. I could see through people effortlessly. Yeah, dude, I was so like, these are such great comments, guys. It was lit. I had so much energy. I was so lifted. I was so just like, yes, I was so positive. And of course, remember, one thing to keep in mind too is that on Saturday, the Sun and Jupiter also came into a conjunction, and that is traditionally, and in astrological terms, like full of optimism. We talked about it on Friday, so I feel like it was just like an expansion, and then the Schumann just peaked because we all, not all, but a lot of people were like, you know what? Like we get to make the decision of where we want to put our energy collectively and where we want to be. So music felt very Uranian and pattern breaking. The whole weekend felt like that. Woke up at 2:30 last night. Don't know if it was Schumann or solar winds. Yeah, I feel like the solar wind peaked over the weekend. The KP index got pretty high. So it was very dense and it was very fast. It was like a coronal hole stream. But there haven't been any major flares in the last week, like big flares. There's things been popping off, but it's been quiet. So lots of breaking through the dome. Absolutely. And I think the full moon, boy, oh boy, we haven't even gotten past the first quarter of the lunar cycle yet. We haven't even gotten to our first quarter moon yet. And everybody's already feeling really, well, I wouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people are feeling something either really high and elevated with the Schumann or just jarred or, reestablishing themselves. And there's just a lot of reorientation and, like Barbara said, breaking through the dome. I just feel like the full moon is going to be it's going to be a breaking through the dome, kind of like in the end of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when they literally break through the glass ceiling. I feel that's coming. It's coming with the full moon. Beware the Ides of March. I don't know if beware is the right word. Maybe for some people, for sure. I would just say behold at this point, because by the time we get to the 15th and leading up to the full moon, wow. It's gonna be pretty incredible, and I'm gonna get some content together for that as well. So I want to tell a story. I want to tell a story about Venus, and this is and Venus in my chart and what was happening at a certain time, and the Atlantean, right? The Atlantean story folded over, and remember the 0 degrees Aquarius is a Pleiadian, is trine to Alcyon. It's a Pleiadian starseed marking. For them to come together like that at that point was very initiatory. It brought real form and action to an idealized collective that we're all agreeing upon energetically, whether we realize it or not. And everybody's actions and behaviors and even perspective is going to shift and change in relation to this larger collective agreement, and I feel very positive about it. So maybe we're being pumped up artificially by the Schumann, but I don't think so. I really think that we are going through the birth pains and the labor pains of something very new, and we are, been going through these pains for so long now that we're here, we're able to, in some ways, hold space and be a lighthouse for other people who are doing the same. So, and they're going to do the same in a more dramatic way. And again, the Ides of March, that 15th through 18th, when we have our full moon, is going to be very, very revealing for many of us of where our inner integrity and our ability to hold it together, is it there or not, right? That's going to be it's going to be incredible full moon. Wow. So, the Atlantean story is this overlay right now, and we've made a different choice. We've collectively made a different choice not to retell that story because it was a disaster. And even without all the specifics, we know that something went awry that pulled us out of alignment with our soul and our spirit and with the planet in the I would say, ambition to harness this natural energy for power and for all kinds of things, right? There was a natural purpose to it in terms of healing, in terms of free energy, but it also can be utilized for all kinds of other service to self type of things. And when I say service to self, I mean a lot of people may have been, and they were working together. So this story is a big part of what's going on, as we know. And if you remember the eclipse in 2017, that was also along these, Atlantean degrees. That's where the new moon was at, conjunction with Regulus, in conjunction with these Atlantean degrees in Leo, right? The total solar eclipse that cut the U.S. in half. Oh, wow. In terms of the, the path of totality just went right down like the diagonal from Oregon all the way down. So during that time, I actually had received a reading from Maru Matu, who was one of the speakers on the first day of the Astrology Summit, right? So my natal Pluto was in square to the transiting Pluto at the time of that eclipse. And so I got a small reading from her. And one of the things that she brought out that I didn't understand as much at the time, because I wasn't even doing this at the time. But I had been listening to her. So I really cut my teeth on her work in a lot of ways, and some other people too, but her especially, 2014, 15, 16. So as 2017 rolls around, Saturn's about to come into Capricorn, right? We have this huge eclipse at these Atlantean degrees. My natal Pluto is in square to the transiting Pluto, and Venus is in Cancer, about to come into my seventh house in Leo, right? Which is where this Atlantis story is, right? And has a lot to do. For me, what the reading was from her was that, in a standard Venus, like something new, you're going to have a new love, right? When Venus comes into the seventh house, you become very sensitive to your interpersonal relationships. You become very invested in the meaning of those relationships and the value that you have towards yourself of those interpersonal relationships. So she saw that as Venus was going to move from my sixth house into that part of my chart, right? Which was in Leo in the seventh house. So at that point, I was like, oh, well, I don't know what that's going to be. Well, little did I know at that time it was going to be this, right? The very beginning of it. And it was me practicing astrology and doing readings and like really fine tuning my role, because up until that point I'd been doing, I was in the midst of horticulture and a medical cannabis grow that I was trying to buy from the owner that I was actually working for at the time. And it all fell through right after that eclipse, like it all fell apart. Like we lost everything in terms of all of our energy and resources were going towards this deal that never materialized at that time. And we had nothing. Like we rolled through all of our money and expected to come back and keep working. We did an outdoor harvest. We took a break and came back and expected to keep going. And because the business deal fell through, because we just could not negotiate a contract no matter how much we were trying to dance around what each other really wanted out of this, it didn't happen. But then I also lost my job, right? And somebody else took over the grow after all that time. And so I was like, what are we going to do? And so I sat down, and for whatever reason, I started like doing astrology every day, like practicing it, immersing myself in it, like really, really learning it and incorporating all of the energy work that I was doing at the time with my teacher / handler, right? Who was, in hindsight, you see this person was really waking up my own Atlantean connection, right? This, my karma around that situation and how it was connected to what I was doing, which was very related to natural sciences and my ambition to utilize that for a really good cause, and having all of these past life remembrances of Atlantis during this time, where I would surely had the same intention, but had been utilized, been exploited. My ego and ambition had got me to be part of developing the technology that went towards the destruction, right? So all of that was unfolding at that time, but it was Venus moving into the seventh house, where it was really just in my senses and in value, and things did change. They changed a lot, but at the time, I didn't realize that what was happening was something very, very new was being implanted, or this fertile soil was being conditioned with Venus moving into my 7th house, right? The interpersonal relationship was changing, and that was changing in terms of all of my contracts in life. And so when we look at the reading and we acknowledge also we're transiting Venuses right now, understanding Venus in the chart, and there's some really good resources in terms of astrologers who are actually part of this summit, right? Sasha Rose is her primary work. And so if you're interested in learning the Venus cycle and how to align with it and to bring that more into your experience, because she really does represent our very the sensitivity to the world around us and what's meaningful to us, which is living healthy soil, right? That is the fertile ground in which we are able to create. So oftentimes Venus will come along and be related to a lot of different things, but it does come down to the medium of our growth, right? And so the medium of my growth was now focused on a different and new type of relationship that was developing, coming into my 7th house, right? So now Venus is in my 1st house, right? Now Venus is in my 1st house and having that experience actually directly on my ascendant at 0 degrees. These two came together. So I'm certainly feeling the growth that started at that cycle back then. So this is a way that not only can use astrology, but the story that I'm trying to tell you is about, at the time, that felt like a really huge loss. Like I was lost. Everything that I had been putting my energy into, all my science classes to learn about biology and chemistry, and preparing myself for, well, at the time it was graduate school, but really preparing myself to understand the mechanisms of how to grow this medicine and to have it, to use it, and energetically, like a lot of stuff came online there, but a lot also was a overlay of that story in order for me to learn something. And so when we look at the Venus transits and we see how they go from a loss and defeat into a new love, let's keep this in mind. And I think all of us can kind of understand this, or more than kind of understand this right now. And it's our energetics that will help stabilize other people who are like, I don't understand this, and they don't think in terms of symbols and their own soul's growth, right? They will. I mean, this is just the way that it is, right? We are going there by hook or by crook, and how we get there is all up to us and our own individual free will. So the stabilization. And so what stabilized me? Well, the people in my life that I cared about and that cared about me and had my back. That's a very Cancerian type of experience, right? And what's in Cancer right now? Black Moon Lilith. She makes a direct quincunx to Venus and Mars at 1 to 2 degrees Aquarius today. So, what it means to be emotionally secure. Who has your back? Whose back do you have? Loyalty, faithfulness, emotional security, self-esteem, right? Trusting your root system, that if something changes, that you're not totally uprooted in your own character. So those are themes to consider as well. And you're going to see them all throughout this whole reading. So that's what I'm going to do. Story time with Dee. Meg, I just appreciate you so much. I can't even stay. Great story about the place of loss in our awakening. It is love. Absolutely. And just wait till you see the reading. That's what's so exciting. So I'm going to, here we go here. I'm going to minimize this and I'll bring the reading up. Oh, one thing I did, we all saw the Schumann, so I don't really need to share it at this point. So, but it was pretty amazing, to be honest. Is this no? All right, friends. Here's our reading. So across the whole horizontal consciousness, it's all Venus. Venus in Virgo, 9 of discs, reversed. Venus in Aquarius, actually, the first decan of Aquarius, the 5 of swords, defeat. Venus in Cancer, the first decan. That's love, the Two of Cups. So we see that there is a huge Venus component to what's going on right now, because it gets into the things that are actually meaningful to people, right? Their resources. We can tell that that's changing. And, you know, it might even feel like people's resources are literally dissipating. So let's actually get right into this card. So the Nine of Discs, or gain, is Venus in the second decan of Virgo, right? The second decan is 11 to 10 degrees. So I suspect when we get closer to the full moon, when the moon is actually in Virgo, we might have a much more personal connection to what this feels like, because this is going to be a big part of the full moon, right? Because the moon will be at 28 degrees Virgo, right? And also all of the Pisces energy, Jupiter in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, the sun in Pisces. We're just still coming off of Pisces new moon, sun and Jupiter in Pisces. This is all opposite Virgo as well. So it can feel dissipating when you have all of this strong Piscean energy, which is, especially Neptune, which is dissolving, which is expanding an infinite space with no boundaries. It can feel like things are dissipating, and they probably are. I mean, money is evaporating all over the place. And isn't it interesting? Have you noticed it? I have. And maybe it's because it's on my mind, but since we've been talking about the Pleiadian revival, since I put that out and really started to, and before that, when I started thinking about the nodes, and I'm sure many astrologers have really noticed, definitely had come to the same conclusion somewhere about the nodes being very much about our economy and what it's built on and money magic. And I started seeing all of these other content creators or videos or even books started to come into my awareness about this very thing. People are catching on about the magic of money and who is responsible for initiating and ritualizing our currency system. It's coming out, okay? So that's another thing about the dissipation. But this is very material with the Nine of Discs, right? And if you see it in its reversal, it doesn't look that much different, right? It's 3 and 3 and 3. So there is something to be gained here. It's just not what satisfies us when it's Venus and she's reversed. So there can be greed for more, materialistic thinking, abuse, exploitation, dissipation. This is again, and Virgo is the process of moving the earth, or the mutable earth. And so when the roots of a plant, they're not moving anything as so much as extracting the resources from the medium, the soil, and using it to grow the fruit of the plant, whatever that is, or the seed that is going to be spread away, right? Because that's the different ways of pollination, right? Yeah. Anyway, I learned a lot about life by engaging myself in biology and chemistry and astrophysics, and then growing plants for a living, growing a medicinal plant, and growing a plant that is a consumable at a boutique level, right? I mean, in the Oregon market. And so, you know, to have like there's so many factors that you had to compete with in that market in order to be viable, which is why, you know, thankfully never got involved. That was the one point I didn't get to make, is that I never got, it's a blessing that happened, that I did not make that deal. I'd be in debt in a way to my business partner in a way that we would never have paid off in the Oregon recreational market in our tiny little indoor operation. Doesn't mean it wouldn't grow, doesn't mean we wouldn't have done great, but it's a business that has infiltrated a shamanic and sacred plant covenant and medicine, as far as I'm concerned. And I liked it a lot better in some ways when it was under the radar or just medical. But anyway, it was a blessing. It was a blessing. And so even though it feels like there's dissipation and we're losing things, and we are, you know, like I said, money is resources are evaporating. This has more to do with what we're doing with the resources. And there implies a change or movement with Virgo. And Venus doesn't like change or movement if it makes her uncomfortable. And so even though we're experiencing the dissipation, or we're experiencing some sort of materialistic thinking in terms terms of how we are utilizing our resources and what we've gained, there's still something to gain here, right? It's just a lot harder to bring ourselves collectively to that awareness. And considering that we are looking at the horizontal consciousness and this causal factor, it's very much, we're all experiencing it on some level, but it's very much in the world of resource and value. And so the more invested you are exclusively in that type of reality of third density, the more you're probably going to be feeling this. But we're all feeling it, right? Like watching gas jump like 30 to 40 cents in a day per gallon was like eye-opening. And even that right there is just like, that sucks. But wow, that wakes people up right away, because it comes right into their everyday valued reality. So so speaking of Venus and Aquarius, right, the first decan of Aquarius, here's our defeat, the Five of Swords, the swords. The swords are never meant to be stable for long, right? And this is what we are going to learn with this first quarter moon in Gemini coming up, which is actually going to be when we'll come together for the first Starseed Fellowship, either Wednesday evening or Thursday. I'm feeling Wednesday because the first quarter moon is going to be very early in the morning on Thursday the 10th, and it's going to be in Gemini. So speaking of never meant for structure and stabilization other than in one's dualistic nature with each other. But the thing is, they're never meant for structure and stabilization because the logical mind is really forced to see everything clear and unveiled, right? So the defeat comes with Venus involved. And the fact that there is so much sensitivity with Venus in our own feels and in our valued life that there's a sharp pain that no reasonable argument is going to soften. The defeat comes from having to see everything clearly and unveiled and what it feels like. So this is a pretty clear progression here, that whether it is intentional, whether it is scripted, or whether it's a result of our oversouls, our collective soul being like, this is what we need. And I feel like a lot of people expected these types of awakenings to happen 10 years ago at 2012. And I think that was definitely part of it. But we're taking as long as we need to take. And I mean, there's certainly some fixed points in time that we're going to have to contend with, but it's a sting. That's basically what we have here. And analyzing the trap that we're in and realizing that there's no escape. It's just a fulfillment of our karma as a result of how we've gotten here, right? So there's a struggling against fate that I think a lot of people are going to really struggle with, especially certain populations that are now coming to realize very, very publicly. I've heard some statements lately from like comedians and other people that about their choices of medical intervention, right? That realizing what was really going on the whole time. And so there are realizations of limitations, restrictions, and this is basically a philosophy born in pain. This is at the heart right now, and this is really directly connected, of course, to Venus, in terms of the resources, the dissipating resources, or maybe someone abused the resources for their own gain. Wow. That's the thing about Venus. Venus is not inherently good or bad, just like none of these things. It's really about what we do with the energy and the pattern connected to these symbols. And Venus just wants to satisfy herself, and it depends on what she is, where the root of that truly is. And I think that there's a lot of realizations, and the heart of it is absolutely a sense of defeat at some level. And so even if you don't feel defeated, there's a chance here that there is defeat that we tap into. Remember, we have all this Pisces energy. There's no way around us being just consumed by or just dissolving ourselves into either the fog of war or into this broad humanitarian experience of what it means for us all to be one. And that means being compassionate and very empathic. And it's very difficult when it has to do with the logical unveiling of what is and having to feel the sting. But we are in a phase of birth. Here is our structure and form, right? The structure and form may not exactly be in the mental realm, and that's something that the collective is dealing with at a heart level. I mean, that's like a sting right to the heart. But this is about something new coming forward. This is where it is energetically rooted. This is where we are rooted. Time for a new start. An old phase is passing away and a new one begins. This is also very Venusian, birth and motherhood and fertility. Even this new beginning has roots in deepest history, in our deepest histories. Remember, the plant isn't just coming out of nowhere. It comes from a seed that came from an ancestor before it. And so, yeah, there's a new start, but it is coming from, what has come before. This is a very, again, second house, very Taurus, which is where the moon is right now. I think this is why there is such a strong Venusian, very, fertile soil type of experience right now that may be either very comfortable or very uncomfortable depending on where you are right now. There's labor involved, but it's going to bear fruit. And that's something that we can't forget. And this is energetically rooting us. This is where we can draw our power from right now if we're struggling, even if we're feeling the intellectual defeat of where we've been. Because the thing about Venus and Mars in Aquarius, and the thing about Saturn and Mercury in Aquarius, is that there's no getting out of the pattern of all of us together. There's no getting out of it other than we change it from our own perspective, which is a very Leo quality, by the way. We have to make the decision here, all of us, and that's what changes the shape. But there's no exiting the shape until you've just exit the whole process in and of itself. And that's something that is dealt with in the 12th house, and this is beyond my pay grade, that's for sure, right? I'm not here to say what happens after that. But what I am going to tell you is that there is something new. There is a birth. There is something that is bearing fruit that we can draw from, that is where our personal power can come from. And you can see, both of these cards surrounding this card in the reading are both very Cancerian in the sense you have the 5 of Roses, or the garden, and you have the children in the garden, and the garden is the protective mechanism that allows them to be free and to explore. And the spider too, what does the spider do? She literally spins the web that is her home, that is where she gathers her sustenance, that protects her and any young that is coming forward, anything new that is coming forward. There is a strong protective component. And remember, the Schumann resonance is that electromagnet, it is the frequency of the electromagnetic field that does in fact provide that provides that dome around us. And yes, there is a breaking through the dome. There is, absolutely. But at the same time, we are responsible for creating the structure or our own sense of protection around us so that or a womb, right? There is a womb for this new growth to happen. It's not totally exposed, but we still do have to participate in this process. But this is very favorable as far as I can tell. And then we move to Archangel Michael. This is great too. So the 9 of discs is reversed, but you have this 9 here that is right up in our conscious awareness. And Archangel Michael, this is a descent of divine power coming right to us, and we can feel our courage growing, we can trust our convictions, our power, our resourcefulness. This is a great place to pay attention to and to give our attention to. And in fact, if we can create a sacred space for this, we're making even more of a channel for this to come in, because can we expect from all of this is love. The 2 of Cups. This is another Venus card, Venus in the first decan of Cancer. Right? This does imply a sense of differentiation, but there's feelings that are focused on a specific object outside of us. So there's in our differences. We get the opportunity to experience the process of unification through love, and having this experience of separation. So there's harmony, pleasure, love, friendship. Again, Moon in Taurus, we definitely want to sink into the aspects that make us allow us to feel comfortable. And this very well could be, especially if you have if Taurus is in a water house for you, or your second house is a water house, perhaps you'll find that you really do find emotional security and a sense of a feeling of security in what is materially valuable to you, in your physical reality, physical sensation as well. So, but in the larger sense, this is just love, right? We have the opportunity to experience unity in difference, and that is the lesson that we came here to learn for ourselves. And this is really what we can expect to say, even though it's difficult, even though we feel a sense of dissipation or loss or a lack of gain, or everything we gained falling away in a material way, or being exploited from us, and a sense of defeat, like, whoa, wow, there's no getting around what that feels like when we have to face up to reality. But wow, and it explains so much of that experience that I had years ago, as we were also at the same basic time of even more robust Atlantean like reverberation with that eclipse. And then after this is when Saturn came into Capricorn, December 2017. And that's, it's about the time, right at the end of October is when we got the first Q post. Regardless of what you think about it now, or what conclusions you have about it, or what you've always thought about it, it's very astrologically aligned, and it has a lot to do with Saturn coming into Capricorn at that point, and right after the eclipse. So love, love, love. So let's look at our guidance real quick. I've already explained a little bit about it. So again, here's the Five of Roses. Here is the masculine male. Here, I mean, seriously, this is like Venus and Mars in some ways being together. And it's not so much the garden is the emotional aspect that holds it all together, but it is in some ways the idealized version of what Mars and Venus could come together and consummate in some ways to unify polarities in relationship, and to be safe, to be ourselves, right? To explore, to be ambitious, right? He's got a little slingshot right there. Is that what it is? I always thought it was a telescope, but he's way more mischievous, and she's got the magnifying glass looking at the butterfly here. So again, this is really about creating a container for our own, not only our own stability, our own character, our own self-esteem and growth, but literally a root system, an energetic containment system that's going to allow, like a womb, allow this to grow. We have to nurture it and protect it. And it's at a societal level with Venus and Mars. But remember, Black Moon Lilith is in Cancer. And so this feels very much like that, by the way. This spider, or like a black widow or something to that effect. But any real spider is very feminine in terms of shamanic representation, and like a totem animal type of thing. The spider's definitely got a feminine and, strong connection to that sacred feminine, and to femininity, creativity, and holding and receiving. Also, it's medicine, right? You get bit by a spider, it's a good chance that you energetically are looking for some sort of intervention, medicinal intervention, or you're being attacked, right? That can also be it as well. I've had clients in the past that I've done energy work with that they were very adept at what they were doing, so they already knew. So, and it had a lot to do with this. But part of this is, you are holding yourself energetically, creating the container, creating the environment in which something new can not only grow, but to be born. And then the panda, of course, creating a sacred space for ourselves, especially in our consciousness. And part of this that I want to address here is the war, right? The Six of Roses, the War of the Roses. And what we really learn from this is that there's no, even though they feel very strongly like they need to battle it out, because at one point they were one entity and they've split into two, and they're facing off. Emotionally, this really does have us acknowledge the war within our hearts, or the battle within our hearts, our war with in our relationships, in particular, the power plays that are active, and to make plans to leave the battlefield. Like, if we don't want to engage this, we have to create a container that is going to allow us to stand in our power, right? Our true power, our spiritual power, Archangel Michael, and our integrity, absolutely, but not fall into the power plays that go along with this, right? Each of them are one thing I want to bring up before I forget is also, too, Black Moon Lilith is moving retrograde. She's at the very end of Cancer. That means she's going to go into Gemini. Asteroid Ceres, right? Which is not even asteroid. Honestly, Ceres is like a dwarf planet. I'm pretty sure that is labeled or designated as such, as a dwarf planet. So she's not even an asteroid. She's bigger than that, right? And she represents the goddess of agriculture and the grain and the process of growth itself, which is a very Virgo thing. But she's also in Gemini right now. So just be prepared in some ways for those types of themes, especially because we're going to have a first quarter moon in Gemini squaring a Pisces sun, that this is going to be relevant again in terms of a number of different experiences, not the least of which is going to be very personal with the moon in Gemini. So we do want to create a sacred space. And look at, maybe that space is right down the middle, and picking this flag back up and being like, remember how powerful we were when we were together. That seems like a really interesting lesson about the Two of Cups and love, doesn't it? Doesn't it indeed? So that's the intuitive portion of the transmission today. That is the reading that I have to offer. See what you guys have to say about that. I've learned the hard way that when things don't work out how we want them to, that it's all part of the plan. So many closed doors in life. The destruction is how we find the light. I can't even tell you how many closed doors, right? How many times I've tried to go to graduate school and something has just knocked me out of orbit, and I feel like, oh my gosh, like, am I ever going to succeed? and it's not that I can't do it, it's other things that knock me out of my orbit. And this is part of having a grand square, right? It keeps you in your lane no matter what. And so that's part of the challenge of something like that in either the natal chart or in the transiting chart, which is what we had with our last full moon, was a grand square and a grand cross, right? The Pleiadian and the Atlantean galactic degrees. And so it is closed door after closed door, challenge after conflict, but what it does is keep you exactly on task. And that's what's happening now, very much so. So I appreciate that comment about the closed doors, because that's very much relevant to how we actually learn and grow. So let's look at today's astrology. I'm going to exit some things out and we'll get into this. So what's interesting to me is the site that I usually use for just moving the chart ahead daily. I think I told you already, it's down. Planet Watcher is gone. So I don't know if it's off the server and I've tried DuckDuckGo and it's not that either. It's not just Google. So I don't know what happened to Planet Watcher, but it is gone now. So I'm hoping I would love to be able to afford at this point Solar Fire. That would be great, like actual software. So I don't have to rely on this. Although Astro.com is amazing. It is amazing. That's my go-to for sure for casting charts in ephemeris. But in terms of moving the charts ahead very easily, it doesn't have a good function that way. So here is, I put it at very early this morning or even late last night, because we still have Mercury in a square to the nodes, which we talked about on the Friday, forecast, the Friday report for the weekend's astrology, because this is our North Node, South Node, the Pleiadian nodal axis right now, and Mercury coming into alignment with that that Aquarian degree that is, yes, very galactic. It's square the Pleiades, as you see, right? It's a T-square here. So we're still coming off of that, and the mind is looking for that stability. It is looking for that laser focus, that structure, or at least that alignment with the bandwidth of the collective, in order to not detach from it, but in order to transcend it in a way that we can then turn around and teach those who are in the process, like I said, of still learning how to do this, of transcending the passions, which is Leo, in order to share and teach from wisdom, right? So that it does require a bit of detachment from this, and this is something that Aquarius people can be very good at. They kind of seem a little robotic or alien sometimes. And which the irony here is that it's sometimes the Leo people, especially if you have Leo in the first house, your seventh house is going to be Aquarius. And I can speak from experience what that looks like in relationships. It can seem very like robotic or just detached a little bit. And that's there's a need to not identify with the passion or the joy or optimism as you, but as the feeling of your devotion. And then being able to step outside of that is part of the Aquarian nature. So the square here is not so much that we have to choose a position, but it was much more about the mind acclimating to a very strong soul pull or experience towards something way more experiential, way more material, and way more about the collective enjoyment at a resource and material level, right? It's all here like a public park, and this is where we're really going at a soul level. It's all for everybody, but how do we take that and teach or share that experience outside of the very strong emotional or passionate aspect that goes along with it. So I don't know. I mean, everybody's experience is different right now. So, but what I am looking at is the moon now in Taurus, which is exalted here. The moon is very comfortable in Taurus. It wants to be in Cancer, but it will be in Taurus because the soil still will hold water, right? The earth will still hold and manage the flow of water, of emotion, of spirit, that which is life. Water is life, and at least as far as I understand it in terms of biology, there is no organic life as we understand it without water as part of the process. So the moon likes to be in Taurus. So the moon very early this morning met Uranus in Taurus as well. And so this feels way more of the access to the defeat, but also the lack of gain. But even more so is a really personalized connection to the reality that we truly want, like really settling in on it, like emotionally and subconsciously. And I would also say the birth card really feels very strong with this conjunction because it might be rapid and it might be difficult, and it changes things. That's what Uranus does, but it also is freedom, and it's also innovation and coming into a new, being released from the confines of the material matrix in Aquarius, right? It is the water and our love for each other that really holds us together and is more powerful than anything else. So Uranus has been shifting and glitching and showing us all the potential of what we could have and what we want, right? It's almost like our consciousness has this opportunity to really assess what we can really have. And we wouldn't even know that we could window shop reality if it wasn't for Uranus glitching it in and out. And this is how people are waking up. So we're having a very, overnight, the dream state. And of course with the Schumann, right? This was just a very personal connection to this process and to what it is that we do want with the moon. So yes, it could be very emotionally like, whoa, but I think a lot of us are going, whoa, I am so lifted from this right now, or I feel the higher bandwidth in my own energetic body of what we can have and what we would want, and taking that with us as the moon moves through the rest of Taurus, because she is going to meet the North Node. And so that's going to be like, hey, I got this, maybe this very sudden inspiration about this. And then when you get to the North Node, there's like an offering here from the moon into the soul's trajectory of like, here, this is for all of us, not just for me, but this is for the collective enjoyment of everyone, right? Not just for me to hoard this. And that is a real opening to the Pleiadian nature as far as I can tell. So That's the moon in Taurus all day today, and that's where it started with today's transits, was this connection to Uranus. So what else is happening? Well, besides that, the moon is going to make a lot of interesting connections. It's going to sextile the sun and Jupiter today as well at let's see here. Well, first it's going to sextile Jupiter at 15 to 16 degrees Pisces and 15 to 16 degrees of Taurus. And it's in our own, this is where the inner inspiration is coming from here, is in this position of the sun today. When you move into the second degree, or the second half of Pisces, you've gone from the federation, which is the bonding at a spiritual level of all of us, to the perpetuation of that, which is where the stepping in of the guru or the avatar, right? The perpetuation is through the relationship and the connection and the investiture, and the experiences at a spiritual level. We have to find some quiet in order to access that inner inspiration and a sense of, well, I would say not only to access that inspiration, but to rely on it, right? Because as we've talked about many times, the fog of war is making it very tempting to reach out in order to find anything to like orient us to any direction. And the thing about Jupiter is that Jupiter is larger than life, so it can be very easy to follow. And that's a big part of how this Sun and Jupiter came together. But I mean, who are you following? Are you going to follow the person that is actually going to lead you and take the front line into battle and is with you 100%? Or is it a fake projection of that? Is it somebody that will put you out in front, has no valor whatsoever? These are questions we should be asking and paying really strong attention to people who are out front in terms of a symbol of leadership and what they're willing to do and not do. So, but I do feel the optimism that came about when these two came together over the weekend. So each of them in turn are going to have this sextile to the moon in Taurus. Again, wanting to be embedded in the medium of our growth, feeling secure, feeling safe in material reality. And after making that connection to Uranus, absolutely took us to a whole new level. And with the Schumann, right? We saw the Schumann, it did its classic amplification, the pitch dropped, right? And it was pretty high, like it peaked about 50 to 60 hertz. It hasn't been doing that lately. And it's certainly, balancing out as well, because it dropped off pretty quickly. But the voices are being heard, and we're also hearing the voice and attuning ourselves to the voice of the planet. It seems to be a mutually beneficial relationship right now, as far as I can tell. So the moon, or Sun and Jupiter sextile the moon. So there are things that we're starting to realize, like there's no past precedent here for what is coming forward that's new, because it's always unique in its growth. Just like when the seed burst forward out of, or the germ bursts forward out of the seed, it's the experience, it's the representation of its unique code that did come from somewhere. But that's the thing about the process of meiosis, right? When sex cells come together, regardless of how they come together, and create a new genetic code, it's seemingly random. And we say that because we just don't know what the mechanism is right now. But it does seem random when the chromosome or whatever pulls apart, and then when it comes together, we don't know what that mechanism is. Boy, if we did, we would be God. Right? And there's a strong contingent of a small but very strong and very educated contingent of people who really do think they are, and that's what they're trying to get to. But it's unique every time, and the diversity of that is going to be it is truly our asset, as opposed to something that is a pest, right? And some people also will find it a pest, which is why cloning and eugenics is very, very tempting and very not for me. Or I'm not in no way condoning it. I'm saying that you can see where the temptation comes from those who believe that they are in fact more fit to rule or more fit to be in charge, right? This is the basic tenet of the purebloods and the Harry Potter and the larger that whole narrative structure is that they were better or more adept or more magical. Therefore, they were the rightful rulers. Anyway, again, this is important because this is going to come up with this new moon, or this first quarter moon in Gemini. Gemini is the first realization of our knowledge, and that there is separation. And what we do with that has a lot to do with everything else. So right now it's still kind of pure and instinctual in our feelings, and grounded in some ways in something that is very natural and not the result of our consciousness waking up. So, but there's no going back once the germ doesn't go back into the seed and that old structure. Nope, there's only going up now. And so it's going to be in the quiet. It's going to be in our identification with the spiritual collective or the transcendental space with the sun, right? And giving our identity, not giving it over, but identifying ourselves with this larger humanitarian transcendental relationship here that is going to allow us to move past and to intuit, what's coming next. And not so much what's coming next as much as the creative frustration at a personal, emotional level may be mitigated with these sextiles to Jupiter and the sun in Pisces by tapping into that imaginative, artistic, magical place, right? It's going to be outside of the realm of what has been. And the only way to tap into that, or to, like I said, mitigate or even activate that frustration into something productive, at least an intuitive, to identify and to find some meaning in what we're all doing here. What is the grand purpose of it all? And to realize too that part of it is also going to be a cleansing of the ego consciousness, to purify the real enemy, which is within our mind. And again, we see the Five of Swords now coming into this connection with the moon and Taurus and Venus involved, of just like, yeah, this is this is the sting of the logical progression of things. And maybe what we need to do now is air that out, right? Air our consciousness, purify our consciousness so that we don't get caught up in that sting so much, and realize again that there is new growth coming and birth coming, and the time has come for us to present ourselves, basically, and our works to the community. First of all, though, we have to, and part of that is an intentional purifying and airing out our minds, basically, airing them out. That seems, and airing out our own feelings and our own intuitive channel as well. And that feels a lot like with the panda in the sacred space. We have to clear that shit out so that we can allow space for inspiration, or to come forward and actually present ourselves to the world. Whatever that means to us personally is going to be different. So where are we at here? Black Moon Lilith, like I said, is in this quincunx to the Venus and Mars in the 2-degree range. This is this morning, so if we were to go forward like 6 hours, let's see here, make sure that that's... that's much closer to where we're going to get. And Lilith, that primal part of ourselves that is deeper than even just our own subconscious, that really does, in a very, very strong and primal way, connects us to a history or an ancestry that is our original blueprint of being here, right? The original human blueprint, and the space in which... she's the mitochondrial DNA, right? Lilith is the original woman, right? And for all of it's not Eve in terms of symbolic representation, right? And even though the Bible presents that as such, Lilith is the original blueprint, right? The original mitochondrial DNA. Everything comes from actually her, right? Not necessarily Eve. It's just the expulsion of Lilith is what is up for conversation and debate. But in terms of astrology, it is so deep and primal and demands self-preservation. We can't lose this. And so there's something here about at the second degree of Cancer being able to, to hover above everything from a magic carpet, so to speak, so that we can widen our perspective and root ourselves in something from a higher perspective, if that makes sense. So if we are, the first degree of Cancer, which is where she'll eventually get to, is, planting the new flag. The second degree is the man on a magic carpet, the ability to expand your consciousness by stabilizing one's point of view at a higher level. So yeah, we're going to feel it here, right? And there's that quincunx both with both Mars and Venus at the same time, right? An adjustment that we need to make. An adjustment that allows us to find some sort of harmony where two aspects don't harmonize each other. And because with Venus and Mars coming together and making this decision and consummating it and planting a seed of growth of the spiritualized, concrete human ideal that is going to grow as a result of our action and a result of our fertility for that to grow, the medium of our growth, there's going to come the unavoidable pushback against that, which is no matter what human civilizations choose to do, it is always going to be susceptible to the impact of natural law. And there's usually some sort of unexpected circumstance. And the best way to protect ourselves, to really preserve that deep part of ourselves, even if we emotionally are having a reaction, or even in our own bodies, right? Venus in Aquarius, again, the defeat is going to, you find yourself crying, right? I often experience Venus transit sometimes as just being so overwhelmed emotionally that I am like having a physical response, which is usually tears for me, but anger as well. And that can be expressed as well, especially with Mars involved. Talk about an outlet, right? Talk about an outlet for it as well. But it's something deeper that Black Moon Lilith represents in this quincunx that we see, that is allowing us to adjust ourselves in the experience maybe of having defeat really close to our heart. It's being able to see it from a much larger perspective of love, right? We are talking about Cancer from a deeper connection to nature and the planet, and really our divine blueprint and the mitochondrial DNA that Lilith represents. If we don't have that, we are nothing more than automatons. Oh my God. Automatons, right? And I'm going to actually post in the description box and also on Telegram a Dark Journalist, their most recent X series, was all about Atlantean DNA and Edgar Cayce. And it's really long, but it is definitely worth it, because they go into a lot of these subjects from the Cayce readings, and also just, their strong research in this area over time. So I'm going to link that so you can get an idea too of like the difference between basically like creating a slave race and maintaining our connection to something way more natural and original, which I believe that Black Moon psychologically will represent our way of preserving that part of ourselves, but also symbolically is something that we can't do without, which is the mitochondrial DNA, which only comes from the mother, right? It only comes from the mother. And we need that in order to be human. So, and to evolve and to do all the things that humans do. And lots of other things, right? The mitochondrial DNA is what creates the energy for the cell to do work. So that's really, really important to life and self-perpetuating life. So Black Moon Lilith, she's definitely gaining quite a lot of my attention recently, that's for sure, in the last couple of months. So let's see where we're at here. That is, and then the moon is going to square Saturn and meet and then sextile Neptune. So there's all kinds of Pisces, Taurus sextiles with the moon today, and all of the friends here in Pisces. So how we feel within the world around us, our emotional security, our sense of fertility within our own subconscious, our own intuitive experience, our own inner landscape, having a lot of harmonious connection that we can invest into a much broader, much more transcendental, much more humanitarian, and much more compassionate experience of reality right now. So while Saturn, of course, is the thorn in the side, as you know, as per usual. I know that Saturn's always getting a bad rap, but honestly, it's just what it is, right? And if you're going to try to transcend Saturn, you try to worship Saturn, it's not going to really make a difference, to be perfectly honest. It's just Saturn represents what Saturn represents, is the law, the letter of the natural law. And you can, and it rules Capricorn and Aquarius too. So even the bandwidth of the human collective is still under the rule of natural law, or the letter of natural law, which is Saturn. So we have to be realistic about these things. We also, in Aquarius, do have to accept that this could very well be like the control mechanism of the Matrix. We'll definitely act through Saturn transits. Like, there's no doubt about that. But that hasn't been any, maybe other people need that message more than I do, or need to give it. But I've been seeing it much more of like, well, understanding what Saturn represents and being personally aware of your energy in relation to it, and how it can be stabilizing but also very limiting. And this is part of the being an adept. This is part of the mastery of life right now. So the moon will come into a square with Saturn by the later today in the afternoon, and this is the real challenge that Saturn, or the moon, is really facing today, is Saturn in Aquarius making that square too. So this is a fixed square. These are pretty strong energies and powerful energies, and it has a lot to do with where we are going to possibly experience an awareness of spiritual forces at work. The moon is, I think there'll be some inspiration, some sensitivity to these this awareness of spiritual forces at work. We become aware through our sensitivity with the moon here, like, right, looking up at the clouds and seeing the seeing the signs, seeing the symbolic representation in just the world around you, seeing the synchronicities and being sensitive to them. The square to Saturn has a lot more to do with the tension and the conflict with some sort of authority figure, or some sort of powerful representation of natural law of Aquarius that's giving a dove of hope, right? A message of hope that is coming through. And both of the reason these are square to each other, which I think is interesting, is that they seem to represent the same basic symbolic meaning. It's just that with the moon in Taurus, this is the natural world. And with Saturn in Aquarius, we are looking towards the frequency of the human collective to offer some sort of representation of hope and peace based on all of our contribution together and the management of it. So one is having us feel into the very natural world and the synchronicities having to do with the blessings and spiritual forces. And Saturn, though, this is, a moon squaring Saturn just in general is definitely kind of like, kind of like a brick wall for our own feelings, because Saturn is unyielding. And so the moon does represent our inner waters. So there's a little bit more ability to shift ourselves, or shift. We always have control over our emotions, right? And our feelings in particular. We can shift our feelings and align them with, or apply them eventually to a number of things. It's a little bit harder in Taurus, right? We just want to kind of like be entrenched in, or embedded emotionally in the world around us. And I do feel like this square by the end of today is going to really challenge us in that moment, in terms of, no, pay attention here. This is in fact the actual authority, stamped by authority message of hope, whereas how we feel on the inside, we're really, I think that there's just a sensitivity, a high sensitivity to the forces at work just around us that we feel within us that are nothing to do with what is being presented at a social level. So it's not that either of these are right or wrong, it's just the conflict that we're going to feel in our emotions versus like some sort of limiting factor is going to become very obvious. But the thing is right after this is within just a couple of hours, really, you're going to find that the moon comes into that sextile with Neptune. And we're going to really be able to... Hold on one second. Let's go forward here. A number, yes. Here we go. It's going to be in this sextile to Neptune. And if we have the capacity to see the innate value in a natural process, much like if we can, and we find a way to certify that in our own way, regardless of how we do it, right? We give some sort of societal certification to a very natural worth within ourselves that's going to, I think, really come from a willingness to give of ourselves, our own vital energies to a very conscious ideal. It really depends on what type of alignment you're having with Neptune and Pisces, right? We're looking for meaning. We may see the sun, the light of the sun, reflect off the water. Remember, but when we're in the water, light does things that are different, right? And, we have to be mindful of that. That's why months ago when Neptune came stationed direct in Pisces, I was like, the fog machine turn right up, and that's how it's been, and it will be until Neptune stations retrograde again, which will be later this year. So the fog of war is very thick, but this also our resources in some way. It's like being able to be a vessel for the substantiation of this conscious ideal is really going to be activated and assisted, and there's this transmutational moment within each of us that is going to, I think, come from a deep understanding and a sensitivity to the natural worth of things. Again, this goes back to all of these Venus cards in this reading today. There is a natural growth and progression that if we align with it, that we honor it, that we are sensitive to it, even in our own subconscious, there is still these elements at play. I think that it is going to really, it's going to be an important moment here in terms of the sextile with Pisces and Taurus, because then Pisces, or the moon, will then soon meet the North Node. And like I said, it's going to be all offered into this soul journey, right? And so we want immediate gratification. We want some resolution. We want justice even. And there are secrets, right? The money magic, all of the Scorpio elements with the South Node, what all that represents on many levels is all, it is propelling us forward to the communion with natural energy. And so the Atlantean story, again, is very important in all of this. So we're going to get a stronger resonance with the Pleiadian part of all of this in the next 24 hours, really. And then the moon will come into Gemini, and it's going to be a different story. And we're going to start leading into that first quarter moon. So what's going on tomorrow is mostly, the moon finishing its transit, like I said, of Taurus, and is going to, that's the wrong month. There we go. I'm always getting ahead of myself. It's such a Sag thing, right? The moon is just going to be making all the connections that it's going to make. So it's also going to square Mercury right after meeting the nodes and come into a trine with Pluto. It's still in Capricorn as well. So this whole area is going to get, this whole Pleiadian galactic connection is going to get lit up for all of us personally tomorrow. And then when the moon moves into Gemini, it will trine both Venus and Mars in Aquarius. And so that's going to be very interesting, very close to the dwarf planet Ceres in early Gemini as well. And this is when Black Moon Lilith actually moves back back into Gemini as well. And these two, Moon and Black Moon Lilith, right, are going to get closer and closer and closer, and they're going to be very close to each other. And in fact, they'll be conjunct right after the third quarter moon in Gemini. So the thing about Gemini is, especially in our fields, right, that there's discovery, there's curiosity, there is knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge, the identification with knowledge in some ways, but it also means that the tension that is inherent in the duality will start to become way more palpable, and all of the possibilities that can exist in the tension in the dialectic will just keep growing and growing and growing, and it's really going to challenge us in our first real crisis point when we get there on how we, if we're still committed. If we're still committed to that symbol, to that avatar, to that meaning of what it is to be truly committed to each other at a unconditional love level. It's going to be our first real challenge, and that's okay. We should welcome this challenge, right? It's where our gifts are. I believe that was on a tea bag from Yogi Tea like 2 days ago or yesterday that I was like, wow, I should try to find it because it said something like that. And that's a good. That's a good representation of that square with the moon and Saturn. Like, where is the spiritual forces at work coming into your awareness? And what is it going to feel like when our emotions are set, pitted against, a very strong fatherly or patriarchal or just limiting structural force, right? That is time itself. Right? Time itself. So this, it's just gonna, like I said, the moon coming into Gemini, we should accept this challenge. And that's why it's good to have the fellowship on those parts of the lunar cycle when we really are starting to be challenged. It's one thing to set intentions. It's another when you're like, I literally have to actually do something about this and feel into and lean into the conflict so that I can grow. So I'm excited to be able to offer that to you guys. So there'll be, opportunities to connect through Subscribestar. You can join the fellowship in Subscribestar. That's in the description box below. You can also still register and participate in the full Astrology Summit that's going on it started on the 5th and it's going towards the 10th, so a couple more days. You can still register for that. That's in the description box below as well. If you're interested in a reading, energy work to support your process, if you want to join my mailing list, all of that is available from my website, catalystenergies.net. That's linked in the description box below as well. I thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I will see you tomorrow for the Daily Medicine transmission stream. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick and see if anything else is going on. I love you guys so much. Your participation, regardless in the live chat or in the comments in the replay, is so appreciated. And I will see you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Take care and peace out. Bye.